see in the chat that Luann has asked the question, what is the missing piece of the pie? So that question is going to be answered in the next hour. Bear with me. Before we get there, though, let's look back at the dream that we've been working on all day. And let's do a couple of more things with your dream. So we have identified in the dreams, in the dream, three things we've talked about, or four things. We've talked about the setting. We've talked about whether there's a persona issue here. We've identified a shadow if you had one in your dream. We identified the transsexual aspect in the dream if you had one. Mind you, not all dreams have both a shadow and an animal or animus figure. Sometimes they don't. But now I want to address a couple of other elements that you might have in your dream. Does anyone, for instance, have an animal in their dream? Anybody have an animal of some sort? If you do, we've been talking a little bit, we talked a little bit earlier about instincts and psychological instincts versus more basic instincts. And often animals in our dreams point to instincts. And so you treat the animal in the dream like we have treated these human characters in the dream. And that is to say, if the animal is your beloved pet, your beloved dog or cat or other pet, that carries with it a certain association and a certain emotion. And so you would write that down just like you would these. You would choose that animal, whatever that animal was that appeared in your dream, and write down one or two or three characteristics of that animal. If my dog Ned showed up in my dream, I would say something like he's utterly loyal, he's goofy, and he is somewhat mischievous. I mean, that's how I would characterize my little dog Ned. On the other hand, if you have a dream about some other kind of animal, a wild animal, a farm animal, then you take what you know about that animal. Earlier, we heard that a dreamer had a significant dream about a porpoise, a dolphin, a porpoise. And again, to delve into what my personal associations are, what I know about that creature is the starting place. And then to do a little bit more research and a little bit more research, a little bit more research about how does that creature show up, for instance, in literature. So if we dream of a wolf, for instance, what characteristics do I just know about wolves? They're wild animals. They're in the dog family. They're pack animals. They're endangered in certain parts of the United States. Being pack animals, they have relationships. They have a hierarchy. I mean, these are just things that I happen to know about wolves. But then if I start thinking a little bit deeper, where do I remember wolves in literature? There's the big bad wolf in fairy tale of the Three Little Pigs or Red Riding Hood, the big bad wolf. So what flavor does that bring, for instance, perhaps to the dream? There's the idea of werewolves, the story of werewolves, as a scary story, and what might that stand for? And what instincts does a wolf carry? They can be very, very fierce. They can be scary. They can, in those fairy tales, they're often the villain of the story. So what does that kind of bring to the dream? And this is just, for instance, this is coming right off the top of my head. You all might have a completely different relationship with the idea of wolf. And so that would color your dream in that particular way. So if you have an animal in your dream, you treat it this kind of the same way that we have done here. You think of a couple of things that that comes up for you really about that, the essence of that animal, or that, and write that down. Another thing to look at in your dream are particular objects, especially if they are unusual objects that catch your attention. In this dream, the car for me is significant. As I mentioned before, the car itself represents being driven. So I would come up with what a car means to me, and it means being driven. It does mean movement, getting myself from here to there. My idea of a car is it's pretty utilitarian. Now, my husband, though, happens to have restored his father's 1974 Ford Bronco. And he has a unique appreciation for vintage cars and vintage SUV type vehicles. And he will go to different car shows to see these things. So for him, a car or something like a car would have a different meaning, and it may have a different meaning for you, but this is what it would mean for me. So as you work through the dream, and you don't have to take every item that comes up in the dream, pick the ones that either attract your attention, but also, as I have said before, pay attention to the ones where you are kind of averse to it. That the things that we are very averse to are pointing to our shadow material, our shadow aspect. Okay. Then pay attention in your dream to what is the action, or what is the high point of the action? Where is the energy? What's the high point of this action? If there is any. Some dreams are simply, you're just presented a picture, and there is no action. But often the dreams will follow a storyline, or there will be some action, and it will kind of be like a short story, or like I said, a little play where there's a climax and then a resolution. Very often, though, there is some action of the dream and there's no resolution. The dream will leave us hanging, and then the dream just stopped. I woke up. So pay attention to the action. And in this dream, the action is, here's the theme of the whole dream, is driving. But there's also another action taking place. And that is the kicking. This is something else that's happening back here in the back seat. And in my version, and in my dream here, this is a really good picture of, kind of a time and a place in my own psyche where my father complex, not to mention my actual father in my waking life, was often driving me. We were in business together. We shared an office for almost 25 years. And we consulted one another all throughout every single business day. And in order to maximize and our business, to make profit, this all goes to being driven. This is all in the masculine realm, very much identified with my father. So in my psyche, that father energy, if you will, that father complex, if you will, is driving me. And I've relegated to the back seat, that is the unconscious, this shadow aspect as represented by my mother. This aspect of myself that's creative and artistic, but also needy, something that I would rarely admit to myself, not much less anybody else. But there it is in the back seat. And then here's my brother, also in the back seat, in the unconscious. He's funny. He's in recovery from addiction, but he's evolved from that. Now, in the dream, he shows up as very young. Well, you know, my brother's only 3 years younger than I am. But in the dream, he's a child. He shows up as he did, as I remember him, you know, as a child. And often, not always, but young children or younger people than ourselves in dreams are pointing to our future and our potential. Often young children are undeveloped aspects of ourselves. And so it's interesting that I've got a father who is driving me, who's older than I am, which kind of points to the past. And here is my brother desperately kicking the seat, trying to get attention, this potential of mine, this evolving potential of mine that's funny, that suggests play, because he does, he plays. But both of these aspects are in the backseat in the deeper shadow aspect of the unconscious, if you will. So this dream is presenting me this picture. It's showing me a picture. It's saying to me, darling, you know, your father's stuff is still driving you. It's these other aspects of your personality are trying really hard to get your attention. Why don't you turn around and start paying attention to the creative, artistic part of yourself and admit that sometimes you're needy and ask for what you need. It's okay. Pay attention to play. Pay attention to recovery. Now, I will say this about my brother. My brother has a identifiable addiction, but you know, if we are really honest with ourselves, we're all addicted to something. We all can fall into certain compulsive behaviors, or maybe we could call them addictions. Certainly we can fall into what the folks in the recovery world call stinking thinking. You know, we can certainly find ourselves on the pity pot. This is part of recovery language. And we can change ourselves. We can evolve. In fact, that's what we're supposed to be doing, is becoming who we were meant to be. So for me in this dream, that's what that is calling me to do. Okay. All right. Now, that's this dream, and this dream for me. I'm going to try to explain for you now an assignment that I'm going to give you that you can work on if you've got the energy for it after we finish tonight. And this is the assignment. Now, if you're able to do this, able to identify these aspects of yourself and write down some of the characteristics of these aspects, like we have done today. And then, if you can, rewrite your dream. Rewrite your dream. And instead of father and mother and brother, I would rewrite my dream like this. I am in the passenger seat of a car. The sort of self-centered, anxious, driven aspect of myself is driving me. My creative, artistic, but sometimes needy part of myself is in the back seat. Behind me, I can't see it. My funny but evolved aspect of myself in good recovery, who is still in potential and still evolving, is also in the back seat, and it's very much kicking me, trying to get my attention. So if you can turn your dream around and substitute this part of me, the driven part of me, the creative artistic part of me, the funny evolved part of me, if you can kind of see your way through to doing that with your dream, it might yield some real insight for you. It's kind of tricky to turn it around, but that's what dream work is for. What part of me is this?
Carrie,
Yes.
question. Where would you list, note feelings you felt in your dream on your dream map?
See? Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. That is an extraordinarily important part of this process, and that is to identify the feelings. Notice, conspicuous by its absence, that I don't note any feelings in the stream. I don't note any feelings in the stream. If I were to note feelings in the stream, my guess is it would be annoyance that the seat was being kicked back there by my annoying little brother. But that's ego talking. Ego's annoyed because its ego is being asked to change and wake up. Now, absolutely, look in your dream and see if you can identify a feeling tone, an overall feeling tone, or a feeling tone as a result of something that happens in the dream. It might start out, pretty even, and then something scary happens, so you're terrified, or something else. And pay particular attention if the feeling tone of the dream does not match the content of the dream. If the feeling tone of the dream does not match the content of the dream. If, in fact, you are having a nightmare, or I should say, if you're having a dream where there's blood, guts, gore, and you're not terrified, that's worth noting. If you see something in your dream that would ordinarily bother you, disturb you, scare you, etc., but in the dream you have no problem with it. Or if you are having a terrible reaction to something that's happening in the dream, but everybody else in the dream seems to be okay with it. Be sure and make a note of that and how all of that feels. That's very important, the feeling tone of the dream. On the Myers-Briggs, many of you done Myers-Briggs work? So on the Myers-Briggs, this goes along a little bit with being a Nazi. I am an NT, intuitive thinking type. So I sadly, my undeveloped side is the sensate feeling type. So I have to remind myself to go looking for the feeling tone in the dream. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Yes. And you note this anywhere in your, that you can put it, that makes sense for you. Yep. Okay, there's a couple of more steps to this process, but before we get to them, let's get to the question that was posed. Let's see. There's
Got
a couple of questions
more
here. Okay, go ahead and ask them.
Okay. When, if appropriate, okay, that was for my part. Ask if the parts of the body alone are important. That reoccurring dreams has a head sitting on a pedestal. It has the only significant conversation with me. When falls off the pedestal, it rolls across the floor, and it lacks of a body significance.
So in my version of dream work, everything is significant. So the answer is yes. And boy, that's an attention getter, isn't it? A disembodied head. So, you know, you might ask yourself, what does that suggest to you to have the head unengaged with the body? You know, I know what it would suggest to me in my dream, but I don't want to impose that on you in your dream. But to be all head and no body, or to see all head and no body. And, you know, that is so interesting, because years ago in one of my dream groups, there was one of my dream group members had a dream that was so similar to that, with a talking head, and ended up rolling across the floor. That is uncanny. That is really interesting. As a result of her dream, she changed careers. So there's that. But again, you have to think about, what does the head mean to you versus the body? What does, you know, the separation of the head from the body mean to you? I was just this moment talking about my strong function is intuitive thinking, and I'm often out of touch with not just my emotions, but I'm out of touch with my body. I can't tell you if I'm cold or hot, or, you know, anything, if I'm absorbed in my thinking function, so to speak. So I don't know if that helps you at all, that suggestion, but yeah, that's a significant dream, you bet.
The other question is, can you speak a little about dreaming as a participant or an observer?
An observer. Yes. So again, sometimes we're asked to just watch the play, that something is being demonstrated to us about our own complexes, about our own internal dynamics. And then sometimes we're being asked to participate in the play. And so that's kind of the difference between those two dreams, those two types of dreams. They're still approached the same way. They're approached the same way. They get a little bit closer, though, to asking us to do something about something versus just being aware of something, just being shown something. So, and this doesn't always hold true, but most of the time, if we are participating in the dream, we're in the action of the dream. It's almost like we're rehearsing something, that we're being called to a kind of consciousness where something's going to be called for. A change of approach, or a change of perspective, some kind of something is going to be called for, versus just becoming aware of something, becoming conscious of it. That's kind of the jumping off point for the difference between those two dreams. But they're both, again, they're approached the same way. Yep. Okay. Any other questions? Does that process kind of hang together for you? Okay.
We had another question pop up.
Oh, okay. Okay. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah. I dream about friends and people I know. How does that play out?
So, the very same way as we've been talking about, whoever they are, those friends, those people that you know, they are mirroring back to you something about you. And so you know, if you've got the time and the inclination, you can do that same exercise where, you know, it's your friend, your acquaintance, and you think, and you really take some time to think about what their positive aspects are, what you perceive their positive aspects to be, and what you perceive their possible negative aspects to be. And it's a little tough because often if it's somebody that we like, that we're really fond of, it's kind of hard to admit that they've got this or they've got that or the, you know, negative aspect, but it's kind of important to look at. Now, here's something that's extremely important to remember too. Again, we can't always align with the positive side. We have to be able to look at the negative. But here's the paradox of the negative. Sometimes what we find unattractive in these folks that we know, whether it's a family member, a friend, an acquaintance, or even a famous person that we're dreaming about. For instance, if we dream about someone and we note that they are, that a negative characteristic of this person is that under certain circumstances, they are very aggressive. And so they can be, you know, kind of want to stay away from them. They can be so aggressive. They might not even appear as aggressive in the dream, or maybe they will appear as aggressive in the dream. Now, here's the thing. This is the discernment part of this, and that is this. If this is a part of me, I really have to ask myself, do I have this aggressiveness in myself and I'm unaware of it? And I need to keep an eye on it. Or do I need it? Do I need some of this energy? Maybe not aggressiveness, maybe just some assertiveness. Maybe I need some of that. And it's being shown to me in a slightly hyperbolic way so that I kind of get the point. Does that make sense? So it does, it takes a little time, it takes a little thought, it takes a little, you know, a little bit of energy to do this work like that. And you have to remember also, and this is important too, you're dreaming about an aspect of yourself. So it's tempting to call up your friend and say, boy, did I have a dream about you last night? And I'm not telling you not to do that, but don't confuse, if you can, their appearance in the dream with them, so to speak. I mean, you can look at their characteristics, but remember, it's about you. So if they have wronged you in the dream, you know, you don't call them up and cuss them out, right? The same is true. I get this question frequently. In fact, y'all, I gave a brief workshop about this to a group of Methodist ministers here in the Jackson area some years ago. And this question actually came up. And it was, what do you do if you dream about, you know, having a relationship with somebody that's not your wife? This is from a pastor. And I said, well, do not approach the woman under any circumstances. The dream is not telling you, it's not speaking literally, it is speaking absolutely symbolically. So you have to understand you are not to go to that woman and tell her that you dreamed of her under any circumstance. So I hope I'm kind of making some sense here. Everybody okay with this? Okay. All right. All right. Now, the question came up a little while ago. What is the space? What is the in the model of the psyche? And I'm going to take us back to screen share just for a sec. Oh, here we go. Stop it. So give it a second to load itself. There we go. There are the complexes. Now, here's this, what we're looking at here. Okay, in this model of the psyche, breaking in to the human psyche at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, day or night, doesn't matter, breaking into the human psyche at all times, and yet surrounding the human psyche, the individual human psyche, and indeed all of humanity, is what Jung called the self, with a capital S, not to be confused with the self that the ego thinks it is, with a small s. So Jung called this the self, but we as spiritual people would call this the divine. It is the source of our being. It is the Holy Spirit. It is the Christ consciousness. It is that which animates us and gives us life. And it is seeking at all times to break into our being and to be made conscious through us, to be connected with us from inside of ourselves, so that we can then bear fruit in the world. So last night I spoke of when Jesus told the story of the vine and the branches. Well, this is the vine. This is the sap within us. This is the energy of God, if you will, that is within us. And our centering prayer practice is to connect us with this, that connection that is so important. That's what centering prayer is all about. And if we have this connection, then the ego is its right size, so that this can come through us, that this ego of ours is the vehicle through which God expresses himself in the world. We are the servant. We rightly become the servant of this. St. Paul writes in one of the letters, I think in Thessalonians, not me, that is not the ego, but the Christ within me. Not me, but the Christ within me. That's what he's talking about. I think some of y'all are familiar with Meister Eckhart, the great mystic. And Meister Eckhart says, in the soul, there is something like a spark of divine nature, a divine light, a ray, an imprinted picture of the divine nature. That's what we're talking about here. That spark of the divine that's within each of us is right here. Jung called it the self, and it is our animating force. Now, if these complexes dress up in little costumes and put on a play for us to show us the dynamics of our unconscious, there is a playwright and a stage manager, and that is the self. In other words, I used to think that our complexes would get in the way of this connection with the deeper self. Now, I believe that the self uses our complexes to connect with us, our deeply human experiences. On the one hand, to show us our complexes so that we can become aware of them. At the same time, they themselves become that lovely, vulnerable point that we can come to terms with, and in order for us to be connected with the thing that's greater than ourselves. Now, sometimes, maybe once in a lifetime, maybe 2 or 3 times in a lifetime, we might have a dream that's so powerful that we kind of know that it's not about our own complexes, but it's about something from down here and from the self. It's from the land of the gods, so to speak, and from the self. And those dreams have a special name. Those dreams are called numinous. Numinous dreams. The numen is the divine. And a numinous dream has an unmistakable characteristic. It has an unmistakable characteristic. So I'm going to stop this for a second. So in the story of Jacob last night, when we talked about Jacob and his life-changing dream, where he dreamed of the ladder between heaven and earth, and the angels going up and down the ladder and God speaking to him. And so if this is the self breaking in, seeking to be made known to us and then be known into the world through us so that we can bloom and bear fruit. In that dream that Jacob had, we can think of this. That's the ladder. And when he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Right there at the point of breaking in, psychologically speaking, that is the gate of heaven. That we carry it all inside of us. We carry it all inside of us. And if we show up and do our work, we will have this numinous experience. Jung famously was asked the question, do you believe in God? And he answered, I don't believe, I know. And he went on to expound that he had had such an experience, such a numinous experience, that he had no doubt whatsoever of the life-giving power, which we call God, the life-giving power that was within him. Let me give you an example now of another numinous dream of a modern person. So this dream was related to me by one of my favorite teachers, a man by the name of Jerry Wright. Jerry Wright is another Presbyterian minister who studied Jung. Very thoughtful man. And I've been so impressed with his ability to express his own and tell of his own spiritual development and his own vulnerability as he wrestled with understanding his faith and lack of faith. And he's just been a marvelous teacher for me and mentor for me. Anyway, he was mentoring a young man a few years ago, and this young man he was telling this young man about some of these concepts, and the young man said, well, I have recently had a dream. Is this what you're talking about when you say a numinous dream? And this is the young man's dream. He said, in my dream, I'm in a cabin in the woods. Now, a cabin in the woods, again, when we think about a setting in our dreams, a setting of our dreams is a place in psyche. It's a place within us. He is in a cabin in the woods that he doesn't know in his waking life. So this is a place in psyche that he's unfamiliar with in his own psyche, in the woods. In the woods is sometimes, not always, depends on the person's experience, but sometimes it's synonymous with the unconscious itself. That's why fairy tales take place in the forest, because we're talking about unconscious and archetypal dynamics. So in his dream, in his dream, he says, I'm in a cabin in the woods. And there is a woman in the cabin with me, and I don't know her. Okay, well, that's an anima figure for him, a soul figure for him, and he doesn't know it yet. He doesn't know her. He doesn't know his own soul. And he goes on to say, and we are both aware that there is an eagle flying over the cabin, circling over our cabin. He says, I turn to the woman and I say, let us shut the door to the cabin before the eagle gets in here. And when he turned to shut the door, he said, the eagle was already there. And the eagle was as large as I am, as tall as I am. It was huge. It was as tall as I am, and it was looking me straight in the eye. He said, I was at once terrified and fascinated. Terrified because that eagle was looking straight through me, and he was huge. But fascinated because he was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I couldn't stop looking at him. He said, and at that point, the eagle raised his tremendous claw up toward me. And I realized that he wanted to touch me as badly as I wanted to touch him. Now that is a numinous dream. It had the features of he was terrified and fascinated. If you are in the presence of anything divine, you had better be terrified. A holy awe is what we're talking about, a holy awe. But at the same time, so compelling, so attractive that you cannot pull yourself away. So to be described as terrifying and fascinating, those are the hallmarks of a numinous dream. And when you have one, it is unmistakable. So what that demonstrates is that this self, this God, this Holy Spirit is longing to be in touch with us. And we in turn need to be and are longing at some level to be in touch with him or with it. I hate to use the word it, with her, with that. Now, the best way, another way for that longing for the divine to be expressed in our dreams is what Roger asked me about earlier today. And that is when we are presented with a longing for the beloved in our dreams. In other words, uh, some kind of sensual, sexual overtone, a desire to be united with the divine is represented in that way. In other words, when sex shows up in dreams, depending on how it shows up, it is absolutely a comment on our spiritual yearning. And all we have to do to confirm this and validate it is to turn to one of the most beautiful books of poetry that is included in our scripture, and that is the Song of Solomon, which has been pointed to by Christian mystics through time as the coming together of the bride and the bridegroom, the coming together of the beloved and the lover, as representing how God longs for us and we long for God. That is the way it gets expressed in our human earthly experience. And that is often the reference that we have in, not always, but often the reference that we have in dreams. Wow. Wow. Okay. How we doing? Everybody just gobsmacked by that, or what? I can't even say Song of Solomon without tearing up. Have y'all read that lately? It'll kill you. Oh, man. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter has passed. Woo.
We have a question. When you have a numinous
Oh my
dream,
goodness, thank goodness.
do you map it the same as you do, just except with eternal gifts?
Yes, accept it as an eternal gift. Thank you. No, we do not pick apart those dreams. No, no, no. Yes, that you are correct. Those dreams are rare and sacred gifts, and we just hold them dear. We just hold them very, very dear. Now, we might respond to them in some kind of creative way so that we can keep the essence of that dream near us in a material way. If we can draw it, if we can make it, if we can find an image of it, if we can find something that represents it in some way, if we write a poem about it, write a song about it, some kind of creative expression. And I'm for this with any dream that is meaningful to us. That is the only response, I think, to a numinous dream. It is some sort of creative response. Yeah. Jerry Wright, that same teacher that I spoke of a few moments ago, he talked about dreams being like a numinous dream, almost being like if you were so fortunate as to sit still long enough to have a little bird light on your hand, you know, and that is a magical moment to have a little bird light on your hand. You don't want to catch it. You don't want to smother it. You just want to relate to it. And I think of that in terms of maybe if you were to capture a butterfly, same thing. You don't want to stick a pin in it and look at it. You want to relate to that butterfly. And that's what these are. That's what these are, if that makes sense.
I meant to say it, but I was muted, that Jacob made that altar and poured oil on it.
Yes.
His dream. He concretized it in that way.
That's right. But think about that as a response. It's not an analysis.
Mm-hmm.
it's a heartfelt worship response, which is very different. Right, right.
Karen, does a numinous dream also, you said always has terror and fascination. I had a dream slash vision. I'm not sure if I was asleep or awake.
Uh-huh.
And I felt like I was floating in the universe as wrapped in the purest love, is the closest I've ever been to the divine. And I've never torn it apart or done it. It was like you said, it's a sacred gift, but there was no terror associated with it.
Ah, very nice. Yes, I mean, if you feel that was a numinous dream, it certainly was. So yes, it was a beautiful gift. I know of in my own experience, as well as hearing dreams, that often that sort of holy awe aspect is present in numinous dreams. You know, that kind of take your breath away, oh, you know, feeling is often in numinous dreams. But if it was nothing but unadulterated and pure love for you, I'm truly happy for you. Any other questions?
Half of my philosophy of life comes from the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
And I kept waiting for you to use that as an analogy. I mean, Dorothy has this dream and these archetypal figures and the things she learns. And I mean, that is the perfect analogy. And I just kept waiting for you to use it. But we already have everything we already need, the journey to get there, but it's just such a perfect analogy. And I think it's a numinous dream for her too. It was I think the Wizard of Oz is a very spiritual story.
I could not, yes, I could not agree with you more. I could not agree with you more. The Wizard of Oz is tremendous. Think of those three aspects that travel with her, you know, a heart, a brain, courage, a heart, a brain, and courage. You know, we all need to integrate these things, right?
And the evil, the wicked witch.
Right.
She had to melt. She had to get rid. That's her Nazi.
That's her Nazi, or that's her shadow. That's her shadow aspect, right? And the little dog, Toto, we can't forget him. There he is, an animal instinct there, very loyal, absolute loyalty in that little dog. And Glinda the Good Witch.
Yeah.
There is the numinous aspect, right? A very positive shadow, if you want to think about it that way, or a numinous aspect to it that provides her with everything she needs, but doesn't do it for her, right? Yeah, Dorothy still has to take the journey. There's no way around it. You know,
you had to learn it for yourself.
Learn it for yourself.
That's what she said to her.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. And it's really Oz, though. Oz is interesting to call out that negative masculine in such a way, and then get it to serve her. Yeah. Instead of terrorizing her and oppressing her, that masculine aspect then serves her, helps her get home. That turn of that masculine aspect, you know, the great Oz, all that. That it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And really interesting, though, I was reading a long time ago, I was reading some kind of breakdown about what the Wizard of Oz meant. And is it Baum? In that the author of the original story, is it Frank Baum? Is that right? Wrote it as a commentary on some current political issues that were going on in his day. And I thought, that's not right. That's impossible. It's so obviously what we said it was. It's this little girl coming to terms with growing up and integrating all these parts of herself. By the way, Cinderella is the same thing. The story of Cinderella, there's a version of the story of Cinderella around the world. There's a Chinese version of Cinderella. And Cinderella is the same thing. It's a story of the maturation of a woman's psyche, of coming to terms with the selfish, self-indulgent, cruel aspect of our personalities, our mean girls, as represented by the stepmother and the stepsisters, being in touch with the positive feminine, the fairy godmother. And all of that work has to be done before meeting the prince. Now, here's where often this story goes awry, in that if people read that story as looking at an external prince is going to save me from this mess that I'm in, that's the wrong reading of the story. I have to deal with these aspects of my own personality to become myself, so that I can now develop the prince within me, a masculine aspect that is helpful to me, so that I can become the sovereign of my own life. Now that's different. That's different. That's a different way of thinking about that story, where all the parts of the story are her. Does that make sense? Yeah, and the whole shoe business, what fits me? Where in my life do I fit, and what tasks and job and work and what is given to me that fits, that is going to enable me to do this, be sovereign of my own life. Yep. So,
Boy, Karen, excuse me just a minute, but I was just sitting here thinking, boy, this just really brings home to me to understand the power of story and what impact it has on all our lives, that we can want to change, but we've been so already impacted by those interpretations of stories in such a way
mhm.
that it's very hard to break out of that. And that's why storytelling is so powerful.
It is powerful. Yes. 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 Yeah. It is powerful. Now, I'm ready to keep talking about this for another little while, or if this is a good place for us to stop this evening. And then tomorrow, our work will be to finish up the dream that we've been working on all along, and for me to introduce to you a couple of other ways to work with dreams, to do your own work with dreams. And then we're going to try an experiment of doing a little bit of dream work kind of as a group, or at least we'll figure that out tomorrow. I think I've got an idea of what we can do. Some of us can be participants and some of us can be observers of some of those processes tomorrow, if that meets with your approval this evening.
Karen, if we stopped now, would that give you enough time to do all of what you just said?
Tomorrow?
Yeah. Would that give you enough time tomorrow to do all of that?
I think so.
Because it would be my vote. I'm saying this again, but you have given us so much information to digest. For me, I'm pretty full. Other people may have different feelings and they can chime in, but I don't want to cut short what you want us to gain from being with you.
Oh, I think we can do several important pieces tomorrow, and I agree with you. It's been a sort of a big day. Um, let's digest it if it's okay with everybody. Anybody nod or give me a thumbs up or something?
I have a question.
Yes, yes.
Um, would you speak a little bit about words or conversations or things that we remember that we may have said or heard said in the dream? One I'm working with doesn't really have a whole lot, but I have had dreams in the past where the comment that was made is what really hits you or brings you to where the answer is, or what the meaning is.
Perfect. Yes, that is a wonderful question. So when we are asleep and we in all the phases of sleep, the aspect of our brain that processes words, either written words or spoken words, is actually offline. What remains online is the part of our brain that can generate images like in imagination or in memory. That stays on, and that's the visuals that we get in a dream. And so if we see the written word or written words, or we hear words, it is often really hard to make sense of them in a dream. And it's really hard to pull them out of the dream and record them, because that part of our brain is just not quite on, it's not online. And so if we have a dream where that happens, where there is a phrase, a sentence, a word that sticks with us through the dream, it is highly significant. Or if we see a written word and we can bring it with us into our waking life and record it, it is highly significant. And so, yes, it is to be paid attention to and to be held, if you will, certainly to be looked at, to be thought about, to be journaled about. Like you said, sometimes the meaning will just slap us up against the head, but also keep turning it over in your mind to see if it has more to it, that the words have more to it. Sort of like taking that a little piece of scripture, our reading this morning for our centering prayer, for instance. You know, I kept thinking about the daughters of Zion. The daughters of Zion. I don't know why, but that just got in my heart somehow. And to just turn that phrase over. So the phrase that you get in your dream, just keep turning it over so that it moves from recognition in your head into a heart space, if you will. Is that, yeah?
Practice Lectio Divina on it.
Ah, yes, there you go. Yes.
And Karen, would that include conversation that you remember from the dream? You're saying
Yes.
the same thing. Okay. All right.
Yes. Conversation in a dream is amazing. You are talking with an aspect of yourself sent by God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like talking with angels. So yes, whatever that conversation is, yes, absolutely.
This dream that I had, I was meeting somebody in front of a church. She was a female. And I remember asking her, "Are you the pastor?" I don't remember what her answer was, except that I got the idea she was the pastor, but I don't remember any words she said.
Uh-huh.
But the words I remembered was what I asked her, "Are you the pastor?"
Uh-huh.
And I have recently retired from being a pastor.
Ah.
I think that has something to do with what's going on with my transition.
Yes. Yes, that would be my guess as well. That would be my guess as well. Yay.
What about talking? I mean, like I physically talk in my
Yes.
dream. And my husband tells me it's usually very mundane, like I'm just giving directions or I'm explaining something, but it's very sharp and clear. Like, you know, when you're first married, he really thought I was awake trying to have a conversation with them because it was just so distinct and clear. But yeah.
So, remember, when we, can you see this at all?
Yeah.
Okay. So, remember when we first talking about this, we talked about the membrane, so to speak, between consciousness and the unconscious is permeable. It's permeable. And so, and we talked about a little bit about how certain medications can either open that up, and so more material comes from the unconscious, or certain medications can tighten it up. But some folks experience the permeability of their kind of membrane between these is a teeny bit looser. And so sleepwalking and sleep talking has to do a little bit with that. You know, when we're falling asleep, there's this hormone that kicks in that causes sleep paralysis. So that most people, when they dream, they might twitch a little bit. Certainly their eyes are moving, but they're not acting out the dream. They're not acting out the dream. Sometimes if there's a glitch in that, or a glitch, if something happens to that sleep hormone and it doesn't quite kick in, we'll sleepwalk or sleep talk. Sometimes that happens when we're under extreme stress. Our sleep is off because of our stress, and so we'll talk in our sleep. We might even sit up and do things in our sleep. On the other side of that, some folks report that sometimes they wake up or they feel like they're awake, but they feel paralyzed. They cannot move. And it is extremely frightening. And it feels like they're there paralyzed for a long time. Well, that's that same hormone that causes sleep paralysis, and it doesn't recede fast enough that you're awake, but you're still in that sleep paralysis mode. And so these two things, the sleep paralysis hormone that keeps us from talking, walking in our sleep, and this permeable membrane here that might be a little bit opened up, one or both of these might be going on with you at any particular time. And it just might be a feature or a function of you. I have only been known to talk in my sleep one time, and that was when I was a junior in college, and I was taking some insane number of hours and just working night and day. My roommate told me that I would sit bolt upright in bed and just talk about, she couldn't tell what. But I've been married 37 years to Jeff, and he's never heard me talk in my sleep. So that was just that particular thing. Have you done this all your life? Do you know?
I don't know that I have. I think my dad talks in his sleep some. And I mean, I've definitely done it for a long time. It may be medication stuff. But it's usually I'm like explaining something, like he told me recently, I was explaining in great detail how to use a paring knife, like how to peel something. I mean, it's, nothing fascinating, or like I'm a flight attendant and I'll be telling people where to put their luggage and how to, what to do, giving instructions about what to do, getting on the plane and getting settled. And I mean, that kind of thing.
This is really interesting. Are you in fact a flight attendant?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have no memory of these dreams that you're.
Sometimes I do, but some I won't. Sometimes I don't unless he says something about it. And then I'll be like, oh yeah. And then like the details will be there.
Oh, okay. So I think that might just be you. And it might be medicine, but it might just be you, especially if you've got a family history of
Yeah.
other people talking in their sleep. It might just be the way you're made up, you know?
He says sometimes the dogs wake up like they think I'm talking to them, or I mean, it just.
So good. Oh, that's great. That's great. But again, if his questioning of you, hey, I heard you talking about a paring knife last night. Do you remember dreaming about using a paring knife? And the dream comes back to you, thanks to him telling you that. Heck yeah, pay attention. Do something with that dream. What
Yeah.
does using a paring knife mean? Who are you instructing? Who are you showing how to use it? You know, that sort of thing.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Karen,
Yes, ma'am.
during that part where you might feel the paralysis and you think you're awake, do other people experience tremendous fear or
Yes.
evil with it?
Yes. Yes.
Evil?
I've had reports of that. Yes. I've had reports of absolute terror, that they cannot move and there is something oppressive happening. And it's terrifying. In one instance, the person was having a couple of other symptoms, and they did get on a kind of medication that seemed to sort of tighten things up, and it kind of fixed it. And they don't have that sensation anymore. They don't even have the sleep paralysis anymore. It got fixed. But before it got fixed, we talked about, this was a client of mine. We talked about how to cope with it if she could remember that I've had this experience before. I know what it is. It'll be over soon. That's one of the other problems with sleep, is that when we are asleep, our ability to gauge time also goes offline. So we can have dreams that seem to go on for a long time, or dreams that seem to be very short, and they might be the same exact period of time. And so when you're in that sleep paralysis aspect, it seems like this is going on for the longest time, but really our timekeeper is off. And so it's really just a matter of minutes, So we can learn to kind of breathe through that, talk to ourselves, remember, oh yeah, I know what this is, be over in a minute, that kind of thing.
I remember that I would have that reoccurring feeling years ago, but it lasted like a couple of years over the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember the only thing that could really pull me out of it is I was just pray the blood of Jesus over it, and to move whatever is evil to the pit of hell, never to return. But it finally dissipated.
Yes. Yeah. And it worked.
Yeah. And do some people report feeling a sensation of being touched in their dream?
Absolutely. Yes. All of the above. Yes. We experience in our dreams everything that we experience in our waking life. I mean, we have the capacity for experiencing everything in our dreams that we experience in our waking life, and then some. So yes, people do have the sensate, tactile experience of someone touching them, or they're touching something very soft, or they're touching something very rough. They can feel the animal fur as they pet the cat, they have a real experience of it. Yes.
Karen, I have a question. What about when you have that sensation in a dream that you want to scream, but you can't make any sound?
Oh
And
my
it kind of
goodness.
recurs.
Okay. Oh my goodness. I've had that a little bit. I've had that before myself. And so if you can, we still look at that symbolically. It's a little tough, but we still look at that symbolically, and we can ask ourselves, where in the world am I trying to express myself and I am not able to? Where in my life am I trying to express myself and I'm not able to express myself? Or where am I expressing myself and I am not being heard? Where is that? And is that playing itself out in this situation, in this dream? But that leads me to also think about another type of dream that is very, very common. Anybody in the group have what I call an intruder dream? Somebody's trying to break in the house or chase me or something like that. Somebody has broken into the house and they're coming down the hall, or somebody's banging on the door and they're threatening to kick the door in, some variation of that, or they're chasing me. And more often than not, is so ominous and so scary. And that is oftentimes when we find ourselves not able to scream or say or help or something. So here is a way to think about those dreams. And of course, the details of those dreams are yours and yours alone. But the overall action of that dream, the intruder dream, if we can start thinking about that as something in the unconscious is trying to break into consciousness. That's what's breaking in, is a new consciousness. It's something we need to be aware of, and it's breaking in. The intruder is in us. It's one of our complexes, or it's some awareness that's breaking into the house. And it feels ominous and terrifying because whenever we come to a new consciousness, we have to change. We can never be the same if we become conscious of something that we were not conscious of before. And remember, change to the ego feels like death. So it feels scary. The response to that is, especially if it's a recurring situation, the response to that is to suggest to yourself before going to sleep that if somebody is trying to break into the house, go open the door and ask them, what do you want? And see what they're there for. Now, tomorrow we'll talk more about how to do that, and how to do that in what's called active imagination. And that's a way in waking life to respond to dreams, to do some work with the dream images that come up. There's a great story. There's a certain group of folk that live in an isolated place in Southeast Asia, in one of those island countries down in far Southeast Asia, China, South China Sea, down there. And as part of their everyday practice and culture, they share dreams. They share dreams over breakfast. The children are encouraged to tell their dreams. Mother and father tell their dreams. They share dreams, just as a matter of course. What did you dream last night? Talk about it. And what's interesting about this group of people is they have very little sign of mental illness in their I don't know if that's because they share their dreams. I like to think that. But inevitably, when a child gets to be a certain age, the child will report a dream in which an animal is chasing him through the forest. Snake is chasing me through the forest. Monkey is chasing me through the forest. Somebody is chasing me. Some animal is chasing me through the forest. And the parents will advise the child, next time monkey is chasing you through the forest in your dream, you are to turn around and you are to befriend that monkey. If snake is chasing you through the forest, you are to turn around and you are to befriend that snake. And this is wise dream advice. When we have an intruder in our dreams, it is something important trying to break into our consciousness. And the feeling of ominousness is our resistance to it.
Is there such a thing though as a warning dream? You know, where you really do get a message of something that you probably shouldn't do because it could bring harm?
Oh, sure. Yes. You know, I subscribe to the notion that all dreams come for health and wholeness. All dreams come for health and wholeness. But expanded consciousness, to me, it is always good. And if that expanded consciousness helps me understand, you know what, I don't need to take that path, then that's a good thing. To be made aware of something, to be made aware of more and more and more of myself is a good thing.
I was thinking about the dream the wise men had, don't go back the same way, you know?
Yes, yeah. Well, you know, I do think that we can from time to time have affirmation dreams where we've chosen a course of action and then we have a series of unusually pleasant, you know, dreams that kind of maybe are affirming the choice that we have made. You know, I heard a dream of a mother whose daughter was about to be married for the second time. And the man that the daughter was marrying had a very controlling and manipulating mother. And these folks are in their 30s. I mean, that break from mother should have happened a long time ago. And my friend, the mother of the bride, had a very disturbing, upsetting, gruesome dream that pointed to disaster ahead for this marriage, you know. And when we heard the dream, this is in my dream group, we all sucked in our breath and thought, oh no, this is going to be, you know, Well, we were wrong. We were wrong about that. They are, they've married, they have adjusted, they have apparently put the proper boundaries up with the manipulating mom. They seem to be doing very, very well. The dream ended up being an expression, though, of the mother's fears, not what was going to happen. What was she was afraid was going to happen. And the dream was bringing her fears to the forefront so she could manage her own fears without sort of imposing them on her daughter unfairly. I don't know if that made a bit of sense.
Well, it helped the daughter.
My daughter, after a miscarriage, she had one child and then she had a miscarriage and then she had a second child. That it would have been her third one. And she kept having this recurring dream that she could see the older child talking to her and she was holding the younger child in her arms. And there was a child sitting on the floor with their back to her. And she said, I just feel like, and this was her statement, that we're not all here. And so finally she said, I think we need to have one more. Because, and this was her statement. She said, you know, I didn't try to interpret the dream or anything. She said, because there's a little soul that's supposed to be here and it's not. And so they got pregnant, you know, third time. And she said after that, she never had the dream. So my question is, was that the prophetic dream? Was that the divine coming in? Or was that her grief with its back to her?
We'd have
I-
to ask her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to her, his
Uh-huh.
little soul was just not there and everybody wasn't here yet. So I would ask her mother. I would not ask any questions.
Yes, yes. But the dream is hers. And if
Yeah.
that is her strong feeling about that dream, then that is what it means. Yeah. It's her dream. Yeah.
Both and.
Both and, yeah. That was my thought. My answer, Roger, was I just figured that for her, that's how she dealt with it. Or there was a soul that just wasn't here yet. I don't know which one.
I had a dream several years before I went back to seminary. I had a lot of angst about going to seminary at 50 and was very, very anxious. But I had this dream a long time before I was thinking about going to seminary, but I wrote it down. And when I was getting ready to go to seminary, for some reason, I was looking back at some old dreams and I felt like it was prophetic. I dreamt that I was this avatar kind of person flying around and I was looking at all these beautiful sights and I recognized that nobody else would ever see these things because they were hidden. Beautiful ancient sites and things. And then I thought in my dream, well, you're going to die because you're not an avatar, you're a person and you can't be doing this. And I grabbed my chest as I was to plummet to my death, only to realize that I had a bungee cord through my heart that was holding me. And then I woke up and I wrote the dream down. It was a long time before I went to school, but as I was going to school and feeling more and more anxious, I was looking back and I found this dream. And I thought, I mean, I don't have any experience in foretelling what dreams mean or anything, but to me, it was that very thing that seminary was going to open places that most people don't ever see, and which was true for me. It was a wonderful, wonderful, amazing experience. I want to go back to school again. And it was the need that I had to know that God was holding me and that would sustain me through that. But it was like I had it so long ago, and to find it then at the right time and and I thought about it and prayed over that dream for so long after that, when I found it again. And to me, it was, sort of that prophetic witness that I needed at that time. It was still there below the surface, maybe, coming back, but it's really cool.
Dreams live in eternity. A dream that you had in childhood can color the rest of your life. So dreams that you had years ago can still speak to you now. And our model for that, again, is Joseph in the Bible. Joseph, the dreamer of the Bible. Those early dreams that he had where his sheaf of wheat stood upright and his brother's sheaves of wheat bowed down to him. And then this other dream that he had where the stars, paid homage to him, his mother and his father and his brothers. And while in the beginning, that sounded like an inflated dream, like he was too big for his britches, like my grandmother used to say, it still held true. But Joseph had to go through everything he went through to have that individuation experience in order for that dream to actually manifest. Mind blown, right? So you had your dream. The image of a bungee cord in your heart is the best. That is just the best. If it were my dream, I think I would have to go get a bungee cord and just keep it around. Just have one. Just keep it somewhere near me. And to remember that God's got me on a bungee cord. I'm good. That's a great dream. Yeah. They're all great dreams.
Karen,
Yes, ma'am.
I can remember as a child, and I don't remember what brought it forth, but I can remember my grandmother telling me, don't tell your dream before breakfast or it will come true. You've heard that, I guess.
Yes, I have. I don't know if that's true or not, but I will say this. I am very careful about which dreams I tell.
Right.
And which dreams I keep close. Because they are sacred things. They are sacred. They are sacred communications to us. And I'm always a little hesitant to share a dream unless it's with the most trusted folks that understand the sacredness of that dream. So I can understand, don't tell a dream before breakfast. I kind of get that, and maybe not tell a dream at all, unless you can find very trusted friends or a very good therapist to tell your dream to. Yep.
Well, I don't know why I didn't think of, well, it was really a good dream. Why don't I tell it?
Well, even so, some of those little treasure dreams should be kept close, at least for a little while.
Under them in our heart.
I have one more. I had a parishioner one time came to me. She had a dream that was she wanted to meet with me and I couldn't meet that day. And she was most people can wait a day or so, but she just adamant that as soon as I could. And she had this dream that she wanted to tell me. And it was very detailed and very specific. And she wrote it down after we talked. She went home and wrote it because that was the only thing I really knew what to tell her. But I always felt like her dream was for me, not for her, because after she wrote it and she told me, she was done with it. She, it was nothing to her, but I pondered it for a long, long time and had lots of thoughts about, I guess my thing is God speaking to me through this person's dream. And I've saved that one probably 17 years and I go still back and look at it because she wrote it down. And probably 4 or 5 years ago, we had lunch together and I said, do you remember that dream? And she had, vague recollection. She said, I think I wrote it for you, didn't I? And it was very much given.
Yes.
And I really still think it was for me. It was a message for me, not for her.
That, in fact, I think that sometimes, yes, I can confirm that sometimes happens. I know of at least 3 instances, for instance, where someone has died and the people closest to them are grieving and grieving hard. But someone in the next circle of acquaintance of the person that died will have a vivid dream about the person who died. Not the people closest, but the next layer of people. I have heard this 3 times. And someone will wonder, do I tell Do I tell their daughter, their son, their wife, their husband about this dream that I had about them? And in most cases they have, and in most cases it was comforting. I had this dream about your loved one who died. They were fine in the dream. They were fine, and I'm just telling you. So I kind of get that dreaming for somebody else. In our dream groups, just very, very, very occasionally, a dreamer will offer a dream in our dream group. And as you say, be a little bit lukewarm about it. Well, I had this dream, but somebody else in the dream group really responds with a lot of energy around those, the images about that. So sometimes we'll say, I wonder if that dream was really for you, So I understand that. I think it's not very frequent. I don't think it happens very often, at least not in my experience.
That's the only time it's ever happened to me. But, I have lots of people coming and telling me their dreams, and they want me to, interpret it or something. I don't know what, and hence my interest in it, but other than to tell people to write their dreams down and pray with them, I haven't ever. So this is so cool. It's just like blowing my mind. I'm like so excited. I won't be able to sleep tonight.
Well, so as a pastor, you're a pastor currently, an elder now. Okay. So you supply that sacred space that a dream can be told in, that a sacred dream can be safely held in. All of you as spiritual directors have that capacity for holding these sacred dreams for folks, which is an extraordinary gift to give to them. And so it is imperative that it be treated with the all of the respect that we would if we approach the altar in our church. I mean, really, like that. Yeah. Okay.